Now, if you would have told me a year ago that Luther Burden would have been a Chicago Bear, I'd have been like, nah, I don't really see that. They've just drafted Rome Odunze at pick 9. I don't imagine they'd come back in the first round and draft another wide receiver. You would have won a lot of money if you bet me on Luther Burden being a Bear. In particular, you would have won some money going against me if you had said Luther Burden's going to drop to day 2 of the draft. He's not a first round talent. I'd have been like, man, I don't know about all that. Sure, stuff can happen and he might not end up being like wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in the draft class, but to tell me that he won't go in the first round at all, I would have thought you were crazy. But yet here we are, and ta-da! The Chicago Bears with the 39th overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft have indeed selected Luther Burden III, the wide receiver from Missouri. And I'm not going to lie, when this pick was announced, I popped. Like, I was really excited about this one because for those of you that have watched me and followed me, and even some of the mock drafts I've done, one of the scenarios I had was Luther Burden making it to 39 and the Bears taking him at 39 because I said the Bears need a speed option in their passing game at wide receiver, and was using that as a way to also like prime and prep fans, Bears fans in particular, for the notion of, hey, what you think are the ultimate needs of this team, this draft and this front office could have it play out a little bit differently, and you need to be open to that. Because at the end of the day, it's a team that won 5 fucking games last year. They got needs pretty much everywhere, no matter how much you want to overrate certain elements of that team. So yeah, it was really exciting when they took Luther Burden. So I want to come here and give you my scouting report on him and like what's a bit of a taste of what Bears fans should expect here and how excited should they be, or should they have some trepidation or reservations about the selection. So let's talk about Luther. In terms of the biggest strengths that stood out to me, I think he's got great initial burst and quickness off the line. Certainly does. And I think he's got home run speed. Now you look at his 40 time and you say 4.41 is 10-yard split of 1.54. Those are pretty good numbers. For a guy like 6 foot, 205 pounds, I don't know that I would say they're fully elite, but I would say his play speed's a little bit higher than what those testing measurables show. He's a really, really good athlete. Really elusive too in the open field. Like that's his biggest strength, right? You're talking about a yards after catch, run after catch monster, and he totally is. Hence why they deployed him on so many screens and kind of gadget plays, found ways to quickly get the ball into his hands. And in particular, big reason why he's such a great runner in the open field is he forces a lot of missed tackles with the combination of wiggle and power, like really impressive stuff, almost like Percy Harvin level type of stuff, right? In terms of being able to like force missed tackles in a variety of ways, pick up extra yardage, pick up tough yardage, impressive work there. I also liked his ability to show a feel for working back to the quarterback, balls that are underthrown, back shoulder fades, stop fades, etc. A lot of slot fades too that they ran with him at Missouri. Really good feel for working back to the ball there. And this could be both a positive and a negative, and I'll talk about it some in the negative category, but for a positive thing, Luther Burden plays with attitude. He's got some pop to him. He's got some swagger to him. He's got some of that dog in him. And I love that. I like a guy, especially as a receiver, that's got some attitude. He's got some spunk to him, if you will. Now, you got to be careful with that sometimes, right? But you could tell he's a competitive dude, and he wants to do well, and he wants to be a big part of his offense doing well. He's also got experience as a punt returner, and he's got some real upside there, again, with this combination of, make you miss and power as a runner. Like, he can flip the field position in the game. He really can. Now, it'll be interesting to see how much he's deployed as a punt returner at the NFL level, but that potential is there, and it could add some additional value to him, especially early in his career for a team like the Bears. He's a threat as a gadget runner, again, due to a combination of quickness and power, but also his vision, pretty patient as a runner. So really like that. And pretty durable, too. For as physical as he plays with the ball in his hands, he played in 38 games in 3 seasons. Like that about him. And also, by the way, he's a young prospect, too. He's only 21 years of age right now. He won't be like 22 until December. So the Bears, after taking Colston Loveland, who's a very young prospect with pick 10, turn around at pick 39 and take another really young prospect. And in this like post-COVID era where you still got a bunch of 24, 25, 26-year-olds getting drafted, it's nice to see that the Bears are investing in some really young talent with real upside here. For Luther Burden, though, you're kind of wondering, like, why is this a guy I've heard about as a freshman and a sophomore being talked about as a really high pick. Why did he end up being available at pick 39? I think there's a few reasons for it. I think it's one thing is the perception that he's likely limited to a predominantly slot role at the NFL level, and I don't disagree with that. Missouri didn't use him a ton outside, and there's a really good reason for that because his route tree isn't that expansive. Frankly, it needs a lot of refinement. His sharpness in and out of breaks isn't great. He has a tendency at times to round off his routes. So you talk about a lot of route running work needed. The route tree isn't very expansive. You could say, well, Missouri didn't do a good job of utilizing him, and that may be true, but there could also be a place of they didn't utilize him in different ways because he wasn't good at those different ways, so they had to find ways to utilize him that would be effective. Because a lot of his production was schemed for, and it was really close to the line of scrimmage. Like, he was targeted a ton within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. So, for a guy like him with that kind of athletic profile, you'd like to see him cause more damage down the field with throws 10, 20 yards in the air, and it just wasn't a part of the game in the Missouri. Now, some of that is because of the, kind of the quarterback play there, right? But there's something about it reflects his lack of route running, his lack of ability to get real separation, especially if he's going up against any press coverage, which is why he's got to be a predominantly slot guy at the next level. Also, for a guy that's going to play a lot over the middle, I didn't think he was always the best on the in-breaking routes, and in particular, I thought he had moments of getting real alligator arms going across the middle. Wasn't a consistent problem all the time, but he certainly had those moments there. He could also get a little loose with the ball at times, and back to that point around like the attitude, the fire, the swag, the swagger. That's great at times, but there were moments where that swagger can lead to really dumb penalties. He had a couple of them against Boston College, for example. Like, you just can't have those like back-breaking 15 yards personal foul or unnecessary roughness penalties, unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. And sometimes I think he can get a little carried away with himself. He's going to have to learn, it's great to play with passion, but don't let that passion lead you to do stupid things that lead to dumb penalties that really set your team back. Something that the Bears coaching staff is going to have to work with him on at the NFL level. So I think those are some of the reasons that he wasn't as drafted as highly as maybe he would have been mocked a year ago. But here's the bottom line. He's a former 5-star recruit. But he did have, I think, a better 2023 production-wise. There's no question about that. Some of that, I think, is more due to like the challenges at the quarterback position and the Missouri offense in general. But it's fair to question like how much of that was on him. Because you look at him and you say, wrestling fans will get what I'm going to say here, at least some will. It kind of reminded me of Randy Orton in the sense of, like, if Randy Orton's booked to win, he's going to make that match look great, and he's going to make his opponent look fantastic because at the end of the day, it's going to benefit him. But back in his prime, back in his peak years, 10, 15 years ago, if Randy Orton wasn't booked to win, he wasn't booking to give a fuck. And he would go through the motions as much as possible and make that match just passable enough, but he was not going to make his opponent look great. He just wasn't. And for Luther Burden, I see a bit of that in terms of when it's clear that the play is designed to go to him, his energy level's high. And his engagement is fantastic. But when it's not, he's kind of he's inconsistent in terms of his effort as a blocker. He's inconsistent in terms of occupying the defense as a route runner when the play is not designed to go to him. You'd love to see him attack every play more consistently than he does. But he's got a great mix of quickness and deep speed. Like I said, he's a yak monster that you could really deploy in a variety of interesting and unique ways. Again, out of the backfield. You can run him on that like kind of quick pitch, throw, right? But when it comes to actually wide receiver, he's going to have to play predominantly in the slot. He's just going to have to. I just don't see a ton of real potential there for him playing on the outside, especially when he's got to go against press coverage. His route running's not refined enough. He's going to need the open space that comes from playing out of the slot. But he's going to have major improvement as a route runner to have real staying power, because it is totally fair right now to question just how much Luther Burden's college projection really projects to the NFL level. Like, is he a legit slot guy, or is he somebody like a Malachi Corley? Is he somebody like a Wan'Dale Robinson? Is he somebody like a Kadarius Toney, where some of the shit they did in college looks great, stuffs the stat sheet a little bit, but just doesn't project very well to the NFL, if you get my drift? It is fair to question that, and it is fair to wonder just how much some of this translates. I think his ability to make defenders miss translates. His running power translates. His quickness and speed translate. But if he doesn't refine that route running ability, if he doesn't expand his route tree, he's going to find pretty limited usage. And you got to be careful with some of these college guys, especially if a lot of their action comes out of screens and kind of slot fades and stuff. Like eventually NFL defense is going to figure out how to contain those guys, and it's going to be what else do you have? And right now I don't know that Luther Burden has a ton to bring to the table. So as excited as I was for drafting him, I thought it was a good value. I had like a late first, early second round grade on him. Thought of him maybe as like a more explosive version of Randall Cobb. That might be a bit generous, but I really did like his game. But he's got work to do. But the thought of him in this offense, he does bring a speed element that the Bears really badly needed at wide receiver that they just didn't have with DJ Moore and Odunze. They needed a more explosive option out of the slot, and that's what they've got here. Really fascinated to see how they deploy Loveland and Burden in the passing game. One thing I'll say about Burden right now, though, not the most effective as a run blocker means when he's on the field, is that going to be a bit of a tell for opposing defenses? It's saying you mostly will only deploy him on the field when it's a passing situation. It's a fair point, right? But I'm still excited about it. A similar concern to Loveland. I see the vision here with Luther Burden. I in particular think that this pick was going to be Travion Henderson if he wouldn't have been taken by the Patriots at 38, and you won't convince me otherwise. I think this pick was destined to be Travion Henderson until it wasn't, and the Bears had to quickly pivot, and they're like, well, we really like Luther Burden, and we'll figure it out, but he does fill a need, even if we feel it's a secondary need. I see the vision. It's a mix of like wanting to deploy him in some Jameson Williams type of stuff and some Amon-Ra St. Brown type of stuff in Ben Johnson's offense. So again, I get it, but for Luther Burden's pick to make sense, just like with Colston Loveland, there's going to have to be some kind of like shake up of the hierarchy and some like trimming of the fat here eventually in order to get the full value out of this pick.